Her research focuses on high quality contributions in marketing, leadership, and education. Ma'am is currently serving as an assistant professor of management at Symbiosis International University. She has been deeply engaged in research and teaching in the areas of human resources, organizational behavior, and emerging technologies. What makes today's session even more special for us at Christ is that Dr. Akanksha is also a former a faculty member at the School of Commerce, Finance, and Accountancy, Christ deemed to be University, Bangalore. Her academic journey, research contributions, and professional insights make her uniquely placed to lead us into this timely conversation on how artificial intelligence is reshaping the world of human resources on a global scale. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Akanksha Khanna to lead us into today's session. Ma'am, we are delighted to have you with us and now invite you to take us through your presentation.
Thank you so much, Varsha, for such a warm welcome. Firstly, good afternoon to everybody. It's great to see that we have almost close to 50 students joining us for this session. As Varsha mentioned, Christ has a special place in my heart. Though I have relocated to UAE, that was about roughly about 4 years back. But I have been with Christ University for 5 years. School of Commerce, Finance, and Accountancy always feel like a home in Bangalore. And I don't know, before I start the session, maybe I would say sorry to all the students who have somewhat been compelled to be joining and attending this session on a Saturday. Because as I was told that, I was invited by Miss Maria to kind of engage with you all over the weekend. It was a little weird for me because I think UAE has spoiled me. We here work essentially 5 days a week, which is Monday to Fridays, and Fridays essentially we don't take classes. So it's effectively Monday to Thursday. So it's a little odd for me again. However, I was used to working Monday to Saturday when I was also, with you all in Christ University. I will try my level best to keep it short, simple, and as engaging and interactive as it can be. And hopefully, you will have some key takeaways from this session. Before I begin, I would appreciate and request that whenever I'm asking a question, please give your responses in the chat window so that it doesn't make me feel that we are back in the COVID times and I'm just teaching a silent audience or probably a blank wall. So any sort of engagement is highly, highly appreciated. That will just kind of uplift my energy levels as well, because just the way you are kind of attending the session on your weekend, wherein it is a time actually chilling out with your friends. It's a little odd, as I said, for me as well to be kind of engaging with you all. So we will try to make it one happy interactive session. Before I start, I would just take a few seconds to share my screen, and I would require a heads up once you will be able to tell me that it is visible to everybody. Varsha, it says that I need permission to share the screen.
Yes, ma'am. Just give me a second. I'll get it sorted.
Or otherwise, it is absolutely okay for me if you people share the PPT. It is absolutely fine. Just 6 slides, so I'll be able to kind of guide you as to how to transition and when to transition. Okay, I think I've got the...
Yes, ma'am. Now your screen is visible.
Yes. Actually, I've become a little acquainted with Teams now, wherein I'm able to upload my PPT to share. Just trying to see. Is it possible for you people to share the PPT by any chance?
Can you please share the PPT with
Dr.
us?
Akanksha, I'll do the needful for you. Just hang in there.
Yeah.
Even we are acquainted with Teams,
Yeah.
so I'll just log in through laptop and I'll do the needful for you.
Great,
Just
great.
give me
Thank you
two
so
seconds.
much. Sure,
Yes.
no worries.
1 minute, ma'am. I will send it. I will do it that.
Not a problem. Thank you. Okay, great. While they are sorting out the presentation part, I will just in general chit chat and share certain things about my Christ journey. Those of you who are actually, thank you so much for sharing the screen. I'll just kind of start with the session. Those of you who are actually in the main campus and especially with the School of Commerce, Finance, and Accountancy, I would just like to tell you that Christ, as such, is one place which can completely be a game changer for you. I mean, even as a person who has been into teaching for close to 2 decades, it completely revamped my personality by putting me into areas wherein I myself doubted my abilities. And then, it's a game changer once you are put into that zone, which makes you a little uncomfortable. And then you just evolve as a better person. So I'm very, very grateful to my mentors, which includes Nithila ma'am and Tommy sir, who always, kind of understood my potential more than I did. And they gave me some amazing opportunities, which I am very, very grateful for. Great. Moving on with this session, as I said, I'll keep it brief, succinct, and fun. Today, we are going to discuss something which is not very new to all of us. We have been hearing how AI has been coming up with these revolutionary transformations in the working landscape, and how it is completely going to transform the future of the work. How I have kept the flow of the session is I have deliberately included your generation per se, which predominantly are the Gen Z or the digital natives, because it is you people who are going to be the dominant workforce in the years to come. So, moving on with the session, I request you to please change to the next slide. All right. AI is here, and now what? Take a look at this meme that you have. Um, Somebody wants to join this call. Do I admit, or will the admin will take care of this? Okay. Okay. Now, I want your response if I ask this question, that how many of you have actually used ChatGPT or any form of AI, let's say in the last 24 hours, for possibly doing an assignment, or writing or drafting an email, or maybe figuring out an Instagram caption. I mean, just by virtue of a thumbs up or an emoji or raising hand, shoot your responses. Okay, we have emojis coming in and some hands going up. Great. So that means that AI has already kind of become our co-worker. Now, the question is that when we end up using AI, are we actually using it to an extent that we are abusing it, or we are adopting it? Are we actually trying to use it as a shortcut, or we are trying to use it as a superpower? Many a times when we think about our future, again, how many of you would be there who would essentially feel that AI is making my work excited or anxious? And when I'm posing these questions, it often carries certain intergenerational differences, wherein a person like me might be a little anxious, being a millennial, while somebody who's a Gen Zer or a Gen Alpha might be very excited about it. Take a look at this meme closely. When you actually see that, we have a CEO, and the CEO is saying, who are we? What do we want? They know that they want AI. but they really don't know why do they need AI. And that is exactly the stage where we are right now. We know that AI is our new co-worker. It's a corporate reality, but we really still don't know the answer as to why and how it can help us. Each one of us attending or being a part of the session is aware that the world of work is changing at a rapid pace, ever than before. And AI no longer is not just something like a futuristic approach or concept. It is prevalent today, it is here. We know that it has been reshaping the industries. We know that it has been changing the way we perform the jobs, the way we live our life, the way leaders are supposed to fulfill the expectations of their followers. And each one of us have heard probably these big questions like, will AI replace our jobs? Or is it going to compel the top management to change their leadership styles? Should we be excited about it? Should we feel threatened by it, so on and so forth? The fact of the matter is that AI is advancing at a pace that no one really fully predicted or can predict. And we also understand that while it does carry a lot of incredible potential, it also raises some serious challenges for the businesses, for the organizations, for the employees, for the generations to come, and the leaders. And the reason is because it is moving very, very fast. And the gap is that are the organizations able to keep up with the pace at which AI is elevating our jobs? So we have these AI tools which were not really prevalent even 5 years back when we were struck with COVID. You talk about ChatGPT, you talk about Sora, or you talk about any autonomous agents. They are trying to reach the levels of intelligence that at one point of time completely seemed impossible. However, with rapid evolution, companies are still, little hesitant as to whether they should be fully integrating AI into their workflows. And the result is that there remains a critical gap between the potential of AI and its actual adoption in the workplace. One example that I can give here is you people, all our students. We faculty members always insist that if at all you are submitting any reflective assignment, you have to make sure that it is not plagiarized and there is no AI detection in that. And Turnitin is also coming up with updates in its software, wherein even if you are using a humanizing tool to kind of make sure that the article or the draft that you're submitting is paraphrased in a manner that it does not detect AI is also evolving. And we are all stuck kind of in that loop. Just to give you a bit of statistics, which I don't know how many of you would be aware of, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, they have a media lab which kind of conducts a lot of research related to all the transformations that are happening in the AI domain across the workspace. And just last month, which is August 2025, they found, as per some study that they did, that 95% of the investments in the generative AI have actually produced zero returns, which is very alarming. Now we are saying that AI is completely revolutionizing our, working styles, our leadership styles, the way we lead our lives. But then the research has proven that whatever investments the companies are making wildly in AI, it's not actually really offering them huge gains. There was another article in Harvard which actually gave this whole study a concept of AI experimentation trap, wherein it said that we are actually stuck in that trap. The report says that while individuals have been successfully adopting all these generative AI tools, that help in elevating their productivity, but the results as such cannot be measured at a tangible level, wherein the P&L sheets are not really showing that, and the companies are struggling with any kind of enterprise-wide deployments. Now, such kind of statistics can be extremely worrisome, especially for the people in the top management. If, let's say, I'm saying 95% of the tens of billions which are invested in experimentation has actually failed to, come up with any concrete or productive value, is the effort even worth it? Or is it completely a waste and a futile activity? And then I need to question how is it that the companies are actually going to learn to use these tools without actually exploiting so much of resources on experiments? How are leaders supposed to understand and interpret these results? What is my role as a future mentor? And to answer all of these questions, it is necessary that we all, as Gen Zers who are going to occupy the working space, we try to break this cycle. And the cycle is that while experimentation is very good when it comes to AI, technology, innovations, everything, but if we are failing to connect it to the true business opportunity, what is the main goal of business according to you? Can I have your responses? When I ask you, what is the main objective of a business enterprise? What would be your response? I'm sure you all are studying business in the form of some subject as a part of your course. And even if you're not studying, let's say you are from another domain, like English or media for that matter, it is imperative that you people should be knowing what business is all about. So my simple question is that what is the main objective of a business enterprise? We have so many startup entrepreneurs. You can put it in the chat window. Feel free to make profit. Okay, great. Thank you, Tanishka. Who else? I hope others are not sleeping. Can we have more responses? What is it that is the main objective of a business enterprise? To solve a problem, to be of some value to the society. Great. To earn bonus and pay commission. Now, all those responses are actually correct when we say profit, bonus, commission. These are the economic objectives. So anything which has got to do with money, correct? But now, in the contemporary times that we are actually living in, we talk about what my business is able to offer to the society. And when I talk about society, it is essentially about serving my customer. So when I say that the main goal of my or main objective of my business is to actually serve the existing and the new customers, and in doing that, if whatever experimentation I'm doing, if it is inevitably falling short of any hopes or expectations, then what exactly am I doing? I'm completely entering into a phase wherein I'm wasting my resources. What is happening is that by actually categorizing or framing AI as something which is disruptive, businesses or organizations are often losing sight of the deeper connection that we need to have with the fundamental objective of business, which is, as you people have mentioned, to solve the problems of the customer. So we need to come out of this AI experimentation trap wherein we are not abusing it. It is very important for everyone, each one of us, irrespective of our work functions, irrespective of our profiles, that we need to understand this particular AI moment within the larger arc of the transformation. And what makes me say that is because if you will actually think deeply, today every company, is becoming a technology company. So rather than people performing tasks on the basis of human judgment and intuition for that matter, or human acumen, we are constantly getting attracted and moving towards a world of data and AI driven decisions. That AI is going to do everything, and all those data driven decisions will be overseen by humans, but not necessarily they will represent the core engine of the activity. So every time you, let's say, log on to Netflix, the thumbnails that you see, the trailers that you see, or that, because you have watched this and the recommendation list that you come up with, they are all AI driven decisions. It's not that a human is sitting and actually watching as to what exactly you people are viewing and accordingly coming up with the suggestions. So editors no longer manually pick what is it that they have to show you. Everything is decided and governed by the algorithms. Humans are just overseeing that, which means that the shape of Netflix as an organization has also completely shifted. It has completely changed. An AI system is becoming the core. It is becoming the central aspect to enhancing the CX, which is customer experience. While humans are curating, while humans are refining, they are supervising. That's why your homepage, it is only because of the AI algorithm that your homepage will completely look different from that of your friend or that of your parent for that matter, because it is Netflix AI which is essentially serving you. And that has actually created a very deep shift. And whether we agree it or not, we are actually somewhere stuck in the middle of it. It is still going to take time that we reach the end of the spectrum. It will take many, many years but it is definitely going to lead to creation of very different kind of organization, and that's the reason why it is imperative for us that we kind of prepare ourselves with these changes. So I have worked in the industry for 20 years, and often this debate occurs that AI is soon going to replace teachers. What is the definition of soon? I still have another 20 years to teach before I retire, and I know that my role is not getting diluted anywhere. But it is changing. I need to change my pedagogy. I need to change the way I end up teaching my lessons. I need to change the way in which I structure my classes. I need to change the way in which I give assignments and assessments to the students in a way that it works as a great learning experience for me as well as my customers, which is my students. So it is very important that we need to understand the big picture, which, kind of help the leaders or employees, employers, wherein they understand that the point is essentially to transform their organizations, that they are using or leveraging on the technology in a way that they are able to serve customers better. They are able to serve customers in a faster way, in a cheaper way, in an easier way, that there is some kind of value addition. It is again very important that we focus on how we can actually use the potential of AI to help the customers better, and we all understand when we talk about future, it is very erratic, it is very uncertain. None of us sitting here know that how 5 years down the lane AI is going to change. We know that there might be some radical transformations, but we still don't know the intensity of it. Because a similar kind of thing happened when the dot-com bubble came. People said that assembly line workers are going to become redundant, but it's not so the case. So it's just a phase that we need to understand. And it becomes important that we experiment with the opportunities that we have in a way that we are able to scale up our operations. And research studies are actually trying to help us with suggesting certain frameworks that can allow us to understand that if at all, even if we are experimenting with AI, how do we experiment mindfully and we don't run wild and crazy with our ideas? And one such framework which researchers have given, it's known by this acronym called as IFD framework, where I is for intensity, F is for frequency, and D is for dense. So it becomes very important for us to understand how intense the problem is. If I want to actually put in some kind of experimentation, how intense is the problem from my customer perspective? How frequently does it occur? And how many users, or instances would be there for this problem to occur in terms of its density? Now, in order to explain this IFD framework, I'm going to make use of an example which might just again click with some of you. All of you have used at some point of time the food delivery app, right? Now, let's say that an innovator comes up with an idea that he wants to or she wants to develop a food delivery app, wherein, one has that feature of coming up with these AI recipe suggestion features. And I know you people are aware about these, NutriPots and other products which are actually making use of AI even to help you with the cooking. So, cooking no longer requires you to be an artistic person having those culinary skills in order to come up with something great. Now we have this innovator who's come up with a food delivery app which suggests you AI recipes, and it has certain features pertaining to that. So the app is going to recommend you the recipes on the basis of what your tastes are like, or possibly what's actually kept in your fridge in terms of the ingredients. So I need to make a mental map in my mind in terms of how intense is this problem. Now, the problem could be helpful for me, but it's not really urgent. If I need to identify a recipe out of the ingredients which are there in my fridge, I can just Google the recipe, and there are plenty of recipes available. I really don't need AI help there. Frequency. I would probably say the frequency is low because I would only cook few times a week. I prefer eating out, or I possibly have a cook who comes and cooks for me, or my mother or father is cooking for me. And in terms of density, it is somewhere in the middle ground. Many people cook, but not everyone wants to really follow a recipe to the T. They like experimentation when it comes to honing their culinary skills. So this is one app which is more like this, AI recipe suggestion app. And the other app is that live order tracking. wherein you are placing your order on a food delivery app and you are constantly tracking the rider's location. Now, if you will actually focus here, this app will let you see your delivery rider moving on that map on a real time basis. So the intensity is high because often when I'm placing an order, I'm hungry. So I'm anxious about exactly what time will my food arrive and is it going to be on time? Is it going to be hot? The frequency is very high because every single order will have a live order tracking which will be viewed by the user. And again, that makes it dense as well because millions of food orders are happening on a daily basis. So between, let's say, the live order tracking and the AI recipe suggestion feature, I have been able to prune and understand that the live order tracking will score higher on the intensity parameter, on the frequency parameter, and the density parameter. And that is how I need to make use of ensuring that no matter what new tools are coming to me in the future, I am trying to understand my core purpose as a organization, which is to solve or help my customers solve their important problems and serve value to the society. Moving on to the next slide, please. We are now going to understand, is AI worth the hype today? How many of you actually feel that AI is overhyped? Just type over or under in the chat window. And then maybe I'll be able to explain you the Gartner hype cycle that we have. I mean, I would appreciate if the videos are also on, but anyway, over, okay? Thank you, Prahlad, for your prompt response. Manoj says under, so we have two contrasting responses. Do we have others online except for Prahlad and Manoj? Okay, now I see some emojis. Hype is okay. Okay. So see, this is paradoxical, when we talk about AI today, we know that it is pervasive and every year, every decade, some new wave of technology will come and it will always have two extremes. Some people are going to burst with that excitement about how much potential it is going to carry. And some people might have those anxiety feelings, as to what could go wrong. And that has been persistent, whether we have the dot-com bubble, whether we have the mobile phone revolution that happened. I think businesses have always faced some or the other kind of challenge. We all, as educators, faced immense challenge when COVID came, and suddenly, we had to take classes on WebEx, and we had to come up with proctoring online, setting the exam papers in a way that students are not able to use the internet. Those days, ChatGPT was not there. So it becomes very important again that how do we actually separate the hype from the reality? And as I've been saying, harness this technology without again losing sight of my main element, which is humans. Every time a new technologies come, they make bold promises. And it becomes our prerogative that we identify the hype from what's actually commercially viable. Because here we are talking about something which is economically profitable as well as commercially viable. And when is it that these claims are going to pay off? Because that is what is going to help me sustain my business. Because some of you ended up mentioning it is profit or not incurring losses and providing value or services to the society. This cycle that you see, it's called as a Gartner hype cycle. As you will see this graphical representation, I'm sure you will find it quite akin to the traditional product life cycle that we all must be aware of, and it again is a representation of maturity and adoption. It's just that we are seeing it within the purview of the technologies and the applications and how they are potentially relevant again to exploiting any kind of new opportunities. What is important for us to understand is that every new technology goes through this hype cycle. You will have innovation triggers, you will have peak of inflated expectations, you will have troughs of delusionment, and then slowly you will move up to the slope of enlightenment until it will just become boring but still productive. It will offer you some utility, but the excitement is going to kind of die down. So right now, if we were to interpret the whole technology hype about AI and how it is changing the future of the work, I would say that we are, and in fact, not I, it's the research which has said, as per the Gartner hype cycle, that AI is just tipping from stage 2 to stage 3. That is, we have actually moved from peak to trough. There is a lot of noise. Some disappointments are also coming, but then still there are a lot of big opportunities. Let's try and break down these key stages. As I said, they're very similar to the product life cycle curve that you know. So the innovation trigger, as the name suggests, some potential technology breakthrough happens, and it creates a lot of interest in the media, on the social media platforms, which kind of triggers this immense publicity. So this is a stage where often no usable product is existing, but we see a potential. It might be commercially viable. It is still not proven, but we see that there is a huge potential. It is then that we end up reaching, because of this immense significant publicity, we end up reaching the peak of inflated expectation. Now, every publicity will produce a huge number of success stories along with failures. So some companies get encouraged, they take action. Many will get discouraged and they will withdraw. Where we are currently is in the trough of disillusionment. We move from peak because we have encountered certain failures as well. And now we are at stage 3, where our interest has started waning out because we are aware and we are cognizant that experiments and the implementations have also failed to deliver in certain cases. And investments are only continuing if the surviving uh, businesses or producers are upgrading their products in order to satisfy again their customers who are right now at the initial stages as early adopters, as we say. Again, when we move to stage 4, it would be a situation wherein we will have a lot of instances of how technology is going to provide benefits to the enterprise, and that is when we will say that it is becoming more widely understood, because right now still there is a lot of perplexity, as we can see in the responses. Some of you are saying over, some of you are saying under. So second and third generation products are going to appear, and more enterprises will try to implement it, but they will still remain conscious. And then finally, we will reach the plateau of productivity. It is this Gartner's hype cycle, especially when we talk about the technological revolution and transformations, that basically are going to help us to separate the hype again from the real drivers of technology. And they will reduce our risks of actually investing in wrong technology decisions, because it is this hype cycle coupled with a framework like IFD, which I just discussed, which is intensity, frequency, and density, which will help us to understand what exactly we need to do. And when I ask this question, how many of you feel it is overhyped? Again, according to a work survey which was done in an organization, more than 60% of the workers felt that AI was overhyped. And still, the paradox is that when the IT leaders were asked about AI adoption, 90% said that it is effective. So you understand, we are actually in a very paradoxical situation wherein there is a disconnect. 62% are saying it is nothing but a overhype, and yet 90% are feeling that it is an effective technology. And it is this disconnect which is showcasing that there is a deeper cultural challenge. We know that the tools exist, but then what is happening is that the employees are often lacking the necessary training. You know, they are finding it very hard to trust a technology and fully embrace them. And that's why if we have AI adoption, we have plenty of AI resistance as well. And that makes it imperative again for organizations or HR people to make sure that they are enabling their people. They are training their employees, they are orienting their employees that when the employees are actually using AI in their daily work chores, it is only going to provide them some benefits. It's not just about the tools, it is essentially about the culture. AI has already made a tangible impact. There is no question of is it worth the hype or not. Many organizations are using AI for everyday tasks. If you talk to an HR manager, it has reduced the menial task to such a huge extent where AI is actually helping them draft the job descriptions, or let's say it is enabling them to create basic reports. We have, these AI tools who are recording our meetings, and they are preparing, they have this inbuilt transcription tool service that is saving hours for people who used to be jotting down the minutes of the meeting. And then we even have these AI powered customer service chatbots that are answering calls 24/7. So businesses are seeing a real productivity and huge gains when it comes to customer experience. So it is useful for sure. But whether it is transformative or not, that is something that we'll have to wait. And in order to understand its impact in terms of how effectively it is transforming, it is important that we kind of ensure that the benefits are not in silos. They are not isolated, but they are trying to, we are trying to basically make sure that they are getting embedded in our everyday workflows. And that's why we say that organizations right now are sitting in the third stage, which is a trough of disillusionment. They are aware of the power that the AI has, but they're still unsure. HR is still unsure how to deploy it in a way that it is safe, and at the same time, it is resulting in economies of scale. As I mentioned, every technological disruption which has ever happened, you people were not even born when the dot-com bubble happened or when the mobile phones were launched. Every technological disruption is very, very overwhelming at first, but it is always the organizations that are thriving in terms of their culture and not in terms of offering fanciest of the tools. They have the leaders who guide their people to overcome these uncertainties with huge clarity, empathy, and accountability. And that is something AI cannot really offer. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Take a look at these 4 quadrants now. It mentions some companies. We have 4 main aspects of HR. I'm not going to talk about what HR is all about. I'm assuming that you people know that every time we think of HR, it's all about onboarding, hiring, learning and development, engaging. And we have these companies. Let's just try and understand how AI is going to play a huge role when, let's say, some of you will go for your first job. How many of you would be okay with AI, let's say, doing the first screening of your CV, or AI deciding as to whether you are selected or rejected with no human intervention? Maybe I can have a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Let's just see what's the pulse of the participants here. My note says a thumbs down. Okay, I'm getting a lot of thumbs down. So we are still not receptive to the idea, perhaps, that AI is going to screen us and ensure as to whether we are getting selected or rejected. Now, when it comes to, let's say, hiring, and I have written Unilever, I don't know how many of you are aware. So AI has been a game changer. Sometimes we do receive these personalized emails, especially if we are not selected or we are selected for a particular organization basis our performance in the interview. And some companies end up having this email domains which are like no reply at the rate dash dash dash, and then say, dear so and so, we are sorry to inform you that you've not been selected for this role. And they even end up giving a reason as well. Now, those personalization of candidate communication is a huge potential benefit that AI is offering. Consider organizations that receive thousands of applications for God knows hundreds of open positions. Now, obviously, humans will have very limited ability to customize the responses and provide the updates to all the potential applicants. So Gen AI has actually, made that task very easy to come up with these personalized communication and acknowledge each applicant, thank them for applying for the role, explain possibly why they are not selected, and then even highlight the fact that any other opportunities that might come, they may be a better fit for them to apply again. So that again kind of has been a game changer. Now I'll talk about Unilever and HireView as I have mentioned here. Now Unilever is a huge company, and on an average it receives close to 2 million applications every year for various entry level and early career roles across multiple countries that it is operating. If there wouldn't have been any AI, and let's say the company would have been doing a traditional screening of the resumes and interviews, obviously that would have resulted in massive investment of time and several other resources for the recruiter. And the recruitment process would have easily taken somewhere close to 4 months or more than a quarter, as I said, to complete, which would result in losing out candidates. It would result in delaying of the hiring cycle, which is there. And obviously, we are not making optimum use of the talent acquisition resources. So Unilever aim to improve, these kind of evaluations, which are at an early stage in order to save on its cost. And they came up with an AI powered hiring stack. They built a multiple level funnel, which kind of blended automation, neuroscience, and understanding of the human intelligence. So candidates have these gamified cognitive assessments. Now, from cognitive, all the psychology students would know that cognitive has got something to do with your mind, right? So potential applicants will begin by completing a series of neuroscience-based games. And these games are going to kind of assess your traits like your attention span, your memory, your risk tolerance, or what is your learning ability. And it is going to generate a behavioral profile for every candidate and not really rely on resumes. You would agree that in our resumes, we end up highlighting, and quite often we end up bragging and exaggerating about our achievements and our accomplishments. So we need a way to actually churn out that exaggeration. And Unilever's AI built recruitment funnel allows us to do that in certain way with the help of these gamified assessments. Once that behavioral profile is prepared through these assessments, the applicants who end up clearing or passing the first step are then allowed to record their video responses. And there are apps like HireView, if you've ever heard, or there is even several others, Interview.ai, etc. Unilever specifically uses HireView. HireView was even in news. It received some backlash with respect to the facial expression, but that's a story for another day. Feel free to read about it. Unilever's HireView AI model tries to analyze your eye tracking, your verbal and non-verbal cues, your tonality, the choices of the words, and then it tries to identify the potential fit on the basis of its predefined competencies. So the reason why I'm actually sharing this example is because I actually want to throw this insight that, the traditional process of even when you'll be having your mass recruitments at campus, wherein companies come and they take GDs and they take personal interviews, they screen your CV, so on and so forth, that might just become redundant. Big companies have already started adopting that. The moment it becomes more economical for, let's say, the smaller organizations as well, we may no longer have the face-to-face interviewing process. Candidates might be invited, for a face-to-face interview, wherein the hiring decisions eventually will be based on the basis of the AI inputs and then the final behavioral assessment. But the human intervention will definitely be a little limited. Similarly, when we talk about onboarding, Accenture onboards again thousands of people globally with the help of virtual reality and chatbots. They have this amazing concept wherein they have made the application of metaverse, and they call it as the nth floor. And that has been extremely pioneering, where the firm has rolled out how to offer an altogether new immersive experience to the employees as a part of the onboarding process. And the reason why they did that was they realized that, now we are working in hybrid setups. Gen Zers, for that matter, I'll be discussing that in my next slide as well. You people now, especially after COVID, you are very, very explicit in saying that you would want flexibility in terms of work from home or any kind of hybrid collaboration, and yet you want to network. So how do you network if you're working from home? Because you lose out on actually meeting people. So Accenture actually has provided this platform of immersive learning, wherein it tries to, it has created these virtual counterparts of physical offices, which have improved on more social collaborations amongst employees. And if you will ever watch the video, if you have time, I would certainly recommend that. Do watch and study about Accenture's Nth Floor. This is how they make sure that the employees who are onboarded are able to identify their mentors and role models in the workplace. And those mentors and role models are going to again play a huge role in possibly mapping out the professional developments or suggesting any career path that the new employees should be taking. They don't have to rely on randomly networking with people, meeting them in the pantry with the hope of actually forming valuable connections. Technology has been guiding these individuals to, let's say, leaders with similar tastes, similar mindsets, similar kind of journey, similar educational background, strengths and weaknesses. And this just again helps in strengthening the social economic ties. Same goes for learning aspect. Now PwC has rolled out this, they built their own internal platform called as Chat PwC. It is based on the GPT-4 version, so as to make sure that the employees feel safe, secure within the AI environment, and it encourages them to experiment. They even rolled out their Chat GPT Enterprise to cover over 100,000 people across US and UK. And they were very particular that they want to give training to the people that how they need to use AI in their daily work, whether it is building dashboards or whether it is doing some taxation work. And all this training plays a huge role. All this learning and development plays a huge role in creation of trust. Why? Because when I see that it is not just the hype, but it is offering me great utility, I'm tempted to use it more. And then that's the leap that I take, that, okay, I will try this. Okay, this is something which is new. It's a part of my workflow. And I'll be very honest when I'm saying this. When this whole ChatGPT revolution happened, as somebody who's been in teaching line, honestly, I considered, and I'm sure many others who are my colleagues on this platform would agree that, we teachers considered it as a sin to use ChatGPT for possibly even preparing our lesson plans or question banks or writing research papers. But we had to accept that change by understanding that it is here to stay and it is offering me some usefulness. It is equipped with training, and it is not just a toy tool, it is something which is becoming a game changer. And it is imperative for me that I actually integrate the same into my daily workflow in a manner that it helps in my learning and development, as well as the learning and development of my audience as well. Engagement. For engagement, I have written IBM. So let's just see what IBM has actually done. So they have this attrition prediction tool. All of you understand what's attrition? Can I have a response? What do you mean by attrition? Hello guys, can I get a response please? What is your understanding of attrition? Even if you want to use ChatGPT for that, you can do that, or Google. What do you mean by attrition? Just give me one word. Percentage of employees leaving the organization, rate at which employees leave. Correct. Thank you so much, Manoj and Maria. When we talk about IBM came up with this attrition prediction tool, and it claims that this tool has the ability to forecast, and they give a big number, which is 95% accuracy, to understand that which employees are at the risk of leaving. And how do they do that? It's not that they end up spying on your daily task, or they kind of intrude into your email space. They try to ascertain certain factors like how long it has been since your last promotion, how much overtime you've been working on your job, or how much of commuting time is involved. And I'm sure if commuting time is taken into consideration, The attrition rate for people working in Bangalore is going to be very high because of all the wrong reasons for which Bangalore has been in news, owing to the traffic getting worse and people taking three hours to reach office. Whether you are actually enjoying good relation with your peers, your interpersonal skills. And it says that while it has 95% accuracy, that does not really mean that it is perfect, because there is a chance that there might be some false positives as well. The bottom line is that tools like this compel organizations again how to rethink how they treat people, how they try to build on their engagement, how they try to be more proactive, to anticipate the problems rather than kind of come up with reactive strategies. And that actually takes me to my next slide, because it is very much related to what we are discussing. Can we please change to the next slide? It talks about you people, your generation. Now, I have written that one word. What is it that you expect from your first employer? I'm assuming that most of the people who have joined as participants are still studying at Christ University. So you people are still in that student zone. But if you were to give that one word, that what is it that you aspire or look forward to from your employer when you get your first job, what would be that one thing which is going to carry maximum importance for you? Let's shoot our responses, please. Mentorship, growth, guidance, placement. Anybody else? We are talking about Gen Z here, so I'm looking for responses from students. Respect. Okay. I thought you people will come up with fancy responses like, we only have to go to work for 1 day a week and rest of the days we can have the flexibility to stay at home. I was looking for some creative responses. Okay, great. Thank you so much to those who have actually responded. Now, I have been doing a lot of research when it comes to understanding the employee experience, especially for your generation, which is the digital natives, as I said. And there are a lot of fancy words and jargons which are coming up. We have terms like coffee badging, office peacocking. I mean, I can go on and on. Dry promotion and stuff like that, which I'm sure might be very new, or maybe some of you are aware of these terms, but they all represent Gen Z. And research has proven a very interesting insight that the attention span for the Gen Zers is just 8 seconds. I have been speaking for close to 30 minutes or 40 minutes, which means that I have already lost half of you. If the attention span, as per the research studies, that the Generation Z only has 8 seconds of attention span, that means that I really need to do something to kind of ensure that I am having a work environment wherein it is resonating with the thoughts that the Gen Zers want. Most of them prefer to work for themselves, not for any organization. Most of you people demand respect, autonomy at workplace. Most of you would be inclined to companies, let's say, that are involved in a lot of social activities. Somebody said recognition. Yes, I mean, it is very imperative for Generation Z to have recognition in terms of monetary rewards and even acknowledgements, which might be non-monetary. You people expect mentoring, which is nothing but having a supportive leader who's able to understand. You people want to go for a lot of outbound activities, and this is not purely on the basis of my opinion that I'm making these statements or claiming these statements. Research has proven, and essentially speaking, it is Generation Z that will make up close to 30% of the workforce by next year. So it is very important that companies should be providing more personalized employee experience to your generation with the help of AI, making them feel more inclusive, giving them supportive leadership, giving them the necessary spark that they need, giving them a very relational, collaborative culture wherein they are encouraged to develop deep bonds, giving them a workspace wherein they feel cool about entering their work environment, making sure that the aesthetics, the design, and the infrastructural layout of the work environment is top notch, that the younger generation is allured to actually come to work and given their best, because that would help in enhancing their productivity, and eventually it'll enable the business to provide commercially viable and economically profitable products and services to their customers, and help serve the customers better. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Okay. Now the question is, can tech fix a bad culture? Yes or no, according to you? What do you feel? Can it fix a bad culture according to you? Thumbs up, thumbs down, anything that comes to your mind. Raising hand, I'm sure. I'm asking that can tech, or let's say AI for that matter, help in fixing a bad organizational culture? Quite often we hear, right, Prahlad, that the culture of the organization is quite toxic. Do you think that tech can fix that? Or AI can fix that? Since we're talking about HR and AI, HR is often related with organizational culture. They often go hand in hand. So do you think can tech fix a bad culture? Okay. I have some emojis and some responses in the chat window. Yes and no. Manoj says both. Okay. I'm not sure how. Manoj, would you like to unmute yourself and say how, yes and no? I would be really interested in knowing.
So, ma'am, where I'm coming from is that tech can enable the culture change, but HR, there a human touch should be there. It's a high tech and high touch culture change will bring about that effective, culture change management or whatever how you call it. But yeah.
Correct. Yeah. That's very correct. We need some bit of human intervention to ensure that we create happiness at work. We create a thriving workplace. Now, often I use a metaphor, Trojan horses. Is anybody aware what's a Trojan horse? Do you understand the metaphor Trojan horse? Prahlad says it can provide information on the needed ethical foundation, but it needs accurate implementation. Hidden. Correct. Thank you so much, Maria. Now, Trojan horse, if I have to talk about the original Trojan horse, it is something that looks very regular on the outside, but secretly carries something very powerful inside. It is deceptive. Like it looks very small and niche at first, but then it does carry a hidden value. Now, in the tech sense, we don't use it in the sense of a virus, but it is often linked to innovation. And that hidden value kind of kickstarts adoption, experimentation, and eventually it carries a massive impact. So when we talk about tech, if the tech is helping us to create a real value, we need to look or pay attention to the technology as a Trojan horse. And there are plenty of examples that are flooded when it comes to how tech has served or how AI has been serving as a Trojan horse. We have this WhatsApp introducing long time back the concept of voice notes. It looked like a small optional feature when it was introduced, but it did have the Trojan horse value. For people who did not like typing long messages, or who even were not very fluent in typing fast, it turned out to be a lifesaver. In countries like India, Brazil, Middle East, when WhatsApp ended up launching voice notes, the usage kind of exploded. So this one feature enabled or helped in creating a real value. People started spending more time on the app, the adoption skyrocketed, and it became a very dominant messaging app platform. The same happened when Google Docs was introduced. When it was introduced, people thought that, hey, it's a lighter version of Microsoft Word. But then eventually they showed that it had the real Trojan horse value, wherein it allowed that real time collaboration instead of me mailing my friend final version 5 Microsoft Word doc, final version 100 Microsoft Word doc. So it basically resonated with students and users that they could collaboratively work right on group projects together without having these endless email exchanges. So we are in this middle of tectonic shift in AI, and it is here to stay. And what becomes important for us to understand is that, does it offer that real Trojan horse value? AI certainly cannot fix a broken culture. If my communication is bad, as I mentioned in the previous slide also, if my interpersonal skills or my trust is bad, then I'm only going to create more chaos, and that too in a fast track way with the help of tech. It is very important for me to understand that the generation that I as an organization is going to cater to, I first need to know, are they AI ready? If they are not AI ready, I need to create platforms that enable them or equip them with the right training, that they don't consider it as a threat. They don't struggle to catch up with the pace of it, and they try to make it as an integral part of the work that they are going to do, because only that is going to create a thriving culture at workplace. Can we please move on to the next slide? This would be my conclusion to today's session. So I hope that it wasn't too long. Take a look at 8 must-have skills for career growth. Now, the bottom line is that we constantly see these reports circulating. Recently, there was this report that TCS has reduced close to 12,000 jobs. And mind you, 12,000 is a huge number. Anybody can feel intimidated after reading such kind of news. And the report said, sadly, that 12,000 jobs it has cut because of AI. However, the fact is that that is not true. The CEO he issued a statement that TCS did not reduce the jobs because of AI, but rather because there was a skill mismatch. So it is not AI that is the reason. It is talent shortage, which is a real problem. It's just that it is more pertinent, in IT companies like TCS, like Google, like Wipro, like Infosys. All the technologies, all the technological innovations, as I mentioned earlier also, they have a phase. And if you look at them, they have only acted as an enabler. They have only made our lives better. And AI is also just a technology. It's just that its impact is going to be far more bigger and monumental, at least at this point of time that we can think of. Maybe 20 years down the lane, we might have something else which is much more monumental. It is a transient time. We are transforming, where we need to learn how to harness AI that is completely reshaping the future of the work. It's all about leveraging this tool to our benefit. Industrial automation that has happened, we know that it has definitely automated these repetitive, mundane, boring tasks. But to say that it can replace human skill with the skills like critical thinking, storytelling, logical reasoning, analytical abilities, creativity, I think that's completely wrong. AI has been elevating the level of jobs. As I said, it is an enabler which is actually making it challenging. It is making it challenging for all of us, but that is for our good only. And the nature of the technology that we are studying or possibly teaching, unfortunately, is going to be redundant for organizations. So the important thing, but which is actually indeed important, is for educational institutions, the board of studies, universities and schools globally, not just India, that they need to understand from the industry perspective that what type of skill sets are actually required, and they must ensure that they are including them as a part of the curriculum so that they are enhancing the employability of the future workforce, which is our students. So, in the times to come, what is going to happen is we will have graduates who have graduated with older technologies. That includes people like me, that possibly would include your seniors as well. And then the organizations are going to say that here we have a need for employees with newer technologies. And then that is going to create a gap. And that gap is nothing but the skill mismatch. And it is important that that skill mismatch has to be bridged. So we need to fall in love with learning new skills, as right now AI is seen at a stage wherein it is hopping between spread or diffusion of AI and the adoption phase. We know it will kill the boring tasks, but it will not kill the jobs. So where is your edge? Your edge is to actually capitalize on human skills, storytelling abilities, judgment, emotional intelligence, creativity, analytical abilities. Otherwise, if you're not adapting, you are definitely going to be left behind. And just to conclude, I would say that AI is not going to take your job, but perhaps the person who is using AI better than you will definitely would. Well, next slide says thank you. So thank you so much. That's it from my end. I have tried my best to restrict myself to just 1 hour. Um, any questions? I would love to, hear from you, and we can have a quick chit chat on that. Varsha, over to you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Dr. Akanksha, for that thought provoking presentation that has left us with new ideas, reflections, and questions about the future of work and the role of humanity within it. As you said earlier, we are now open for the Q&A session. To all participants, please feel free to type your questions in the chat box, and I'll be happy to moderate them, or you may raise your hand virtually to ask questions directly.
It's actually dangerous if there is no question. That means that either everything's clear or everything is all clear, that nothing is clear. It's paradoxical again. Thank you so much, Dr. Arya. Ritika has raised her hand. Ritika, you would like to ask a question?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, and this has been very insightful. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
There's this one question which is a little offbeat. It's not regarding the discussion here, but however, I just wanted to know that I have been pursuing my master's here in Christ. I have my bachelor's in economics with Mathstat, and for master's, I've picked strategic management as one of my courses.
Okay.
So I just want to know, is it very necessary for us to actually graduate from a particular country to be able to work there? Or is it that we can actually come there and, or maybe, even it's on LinkedIn, if we can actually find job, is it like open? Is it like the mainstream thing? Or maybe I'll have to crack my head actually to actually
Are
get a
you
job there?
specifically talking, Ritika, about Middle East job potentials?
Yes, yes. Middle East also. If you have insights about other countries, that'll be even nicer.
I have definitely insight globally. Since I'm there in Middle East, I can tell you, Middle East is very open to expats, and 80% of the workforce population here is expats, and most of them are Indians. So I think that
Okay.
first clarifies one thing. Second thing that I can suggest all of you Gen Zers apparently is to make sure that you are actually using your digital tools to the maximum possible potential. You know what I tell my students here? Unfortunately, I did not do that back when I was in Christ, and I'm being as frank as I can be. I was there in Christ till the end of 2021, and I barely
Okay.
had not even one single post on my LinkedIn, Ritika, because I never felt the need to.
Okay.
When I shifted to UAE, while my CV was very attractive, but nobody now wants to actually see the hard copy of my CV. They want to see my social presence. And when I'm talking about social presence, I'm not talking about TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. They want to see my social presence on professional platforms. And now, what I tell my students, because see, times change, we are in a different era now altogether. I tell my students that even if you're sneezing, you need to put it on your LinkedIn, and you should not be bothered about how many likes you are getting or how many views you are getting, because
Okay.
honestly, when I shifted to Middle East, though I had a very rich profile back in India, people in UAE did not know about my accomplishments when job openings were there, and I got my job through my LinkedIn profile. The HR of my current organization scanned my LinkedIn profile and reached out to me with a potential job opportunity. Now, to come to your second question, that you are doing your specialization in strategic management, and is it mandatory for you that you should be sticking to those kind of roles or profile? What happens is our specialization acts as a catalyst at the initial stages of our career to kind of decide what kind of trajectory we are going to take. And as you enter the working space and gain some experience, even if you have diverted from your track, let's say you are doing in strategic management, but you venture into something which is related to banking and accounting for that matter, it is that path which is then going to govern the narrative for your future. You get that? So
Okay. Yes, yes.
initially, you should be open to the idea of exploration and experimenting, because sometimes it does happen that what we are actually studying within the classroom walls Might be
Might not
radically different
resonate.
when we enter the workspace. So, if I have to talk about strategic management and leadership, Ritika, you would agree that it's not that initially when you will enter the workspace, you are going to wear a leadership role. You would be working under a leader or a supervisor, and it is only slowly and gradually you're going to climb up the ladder. You get that, right?
Right.
So be flexible, be adaptable, be open, and make sure that you have a strong digital presence. And do not get affected even if you don't get a single like on your post, because people do watch or read about your post. There would be certainly impressions to your post on the professional platform, but they might
Correct.
just be too lazy to acknowledge and like it and give you a sense of social validation that, hey, Ritika, that's a great post. So, yeah.
I think, thank you so much for this because I am very hesitant to actually put things on LinkedIn despite all that, experiences because of this
You are making
particular
a huge
reason.
mistake. You will thank me later.
Correct, correct.
Start getting active on LinkedIn.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's any if, via LinkedIn, if there's like sources where we can actually get interviewed and find jobs as a management, I mean project manager roles in the UAE, if that's a possibility. And like, is it a like very cumbersome kind of a task or
No,
it's
you
doable?
can always have your filters open wherein you are, publicly declaring that you are open to jobs, you're seeking for job opportunities in certain parts of the world. You have to just subscribe and follow those pages so that whenever they end up putting up their job opening, you know that there is an opening and then you'll be able to apply for it. There are so many Indians are filled out here in UAE, if I have to tell you. 70% of the people are actually Indians or Asians only for that matter. It's not an easy way out. I mean, I don't know if I'm sounding that, oh, you will get a job very easily in Dubai, but then it's not that difficult also. you know
All right.
People always prefer employees who have some bit of local experience, but then there are also companies who always want to give a kickstart to those who don't have any experience of working locally, and then it just becomes that stepping stone for you, for that matter.
All right. Thank you.
My LinkedIn profile is okay. Somebody's asked. I will possibly put that. Wait, it's underscore Akanksha Khanna 18. You can just put Dr. Akanksha Khanna, Symbiosis International University, Dubai. So I think in Dubai there is only one Dr. Akanksha Khanna. So yeah, that would be me. And you have seen this face, so you'll be able to recognize my profile. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to. And that way maybe you'll get encouraged that okay, if Akanksha ma'am can be active, and you will see, I was till the time I was working in Christ, I did not have a single post. It was not required. Christ itself had made me a star that I did not really need any social media presence. It was only when I came to Dubai, I was an unknown face, and I was kind of having my fair share of struggle to get absorbed in an organization. I had come to a new country altogether. It kind of became little necessary, and honestly now the market works like that. I don't know in India whether it works anymore or not, but if you have to actually explore working options globally, you should have a very strong presence on LinkedIn. You should be active. And it starts from here only, even when you are in your student mode. Any seminar that you are a part of, any conference that you have helped in volunteering, any classroom presentation that you have given for a subject of yours, make sure that you're putting it on LinkedIn. How would people know what you have done? So it becomes very, very important. Right. Anybody else? Prahlad, you have raised your hand.
Yes, ma'am. I had a simple doubt.
Yes, please shoot.
Do you see the possibility of a future AI software where human intervention would be possible so that it just fills out what AI cannot, making it the best experience in terms of software?
Yes, in fact, there are discussions which are going on that there is a possibility that white collar jobs are more at risk than the blue collar jobs. Especially the ones which are very knowledge based. While I said that you need to have those critical skills like analytical abilities and all, we all know that AI is also getting incredibly good at analyzing data, or maybe automating repetitive tasks, or even coming up with generation of creative content. So again, there have been talks like jobs in areas like legal analysis, Today, I don't need a lawyer. I can get the entire detailed legal report through generative AI. Or let's say any medical diagnosis like radiologist's role, it is being disrupted by AI powered systems. And on the other hand, jobs that require some sort of physical dexterity, the vocational training like an electrician or a plumber or a mechanic, I believe they are much harder for AI as such to replicate. So, to answer your question, yes, but then again, we'll have to balance it out. Every technological shift will have certain fears, and I know that this question is stemming from that fear, or possibly you trying to explore what you need to do. It will take time for an AI tool, as I said, to integrate, its advantage with the human intervention with which the organizations are running. Future of work is undeniably linked to AI. There is no doubt about it. It will only be able to kind of capitalize on it if we are able to ensure that the culture of the organization is not somewhere getting disappeared, when we are trying to harness the AI integration into our daily routines.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think we are good, Varsha.
Yes, ma'am. So, if there are no more questions, then we can draw this session to a close. So, let me take this opportunity to express our heartfelt gratitude to Reverend Dr. Jose Sisi, our Vice Chancellor, for his constant vision and leadership. Our Dr. Viju PD, our Pro Vice Chancellor, for his encouragement and support. To Brigadier Jagdish Sir, Director of CPCG and Alumni Engagement, for pioneering this initiative. To Ms. Ranju Matthew and Professor Rishikesh KB for their valuable guidance in shaping today's session. To our mentor of the Middle East chapter, Dr. Maria Monica, for her constant support. And to our distinguished resource person, Dr. Akanksha Khanna, for her insightful sharing and for reconnecting with the Christ family through this platform. And finally, to all our alumni, faculty, students, and guests who have joined us today from across the globe, thank you for making this webinar a success. This is just the beginning of many more meaningful conversations to come as part of the Christ Alumni Global Connect webinar series. On that note, I wish you all a very wonderful day ahead. Stay safe, stay inspired, and stay connected. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Varsha. Thank you, everyone. It was lovely interacting. Thanks a lot.